he shows up and stops us dead in our tracks. Here's Saul. He is hell-bent on traveling down the wrong road to arrest and kill anyone who dares profess that Jesus is the risen Messiah and spread that religious poison to other people. And he has papers from the chief priests giving him authority and making it legal for him to do what he wants to do. And he is not a candidate for conversion. He is anything but open to the gospel, we could say. Or he is one of the least likely to have a conversion with Christ. He shows no signs of softening. He gives no indication that he is willing to even have a considerate conversation. He is not only closed, but he is convinced that to believe in Jesus is nothing short of crazy. It is to this person that Jesus shows up. Can I tell you something? Don't write people off. Don't think, why waste my breath on them? You never know who God thinks is going to make a great Christian someday. They may not look interested. They may even seem opposed to the gospel. They may even not know it, that they're going to be converted. But God is dealing with their heart. It is hard for them to kick against the goads. The inward wrestling where God keeps drawing them. It's been said that the worst sinners make the best saints. Now, I don't propose you become a real good sinner in order to see if that works, but don't give up on people. Notice our text says, as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. Then he fell to the ground, and he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? Then the Lord said, I'm Jesus whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads. It's hard for you to keep wrestling with what I'm doing inside your heart. On the outside, it doesn't look like you care very much. On the outside, it looks like you've dismissed the fact that I could be the Messiah and the Savior of the world. But you and I both know we've been talking on the inside. I want to tell you, God talks to people even when they put up all this kind of stuff on the outside. It's hard for you to kick against the goads. So he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what do you want me to do? Then the Lord said to him, arise and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. So much in these short verses. First, God is not intimidated by our tough exteriors. We might be able to run people off with our pushback, with our attitude, with our y'all leave me alone, with our powering up, with our loudness, with our machismo, with our lying, with our pretending. We might be able to get but God is not afraid. God is not afraid of us. He's not afraid of our insults. He's not afraid of our behavior. He's not afraid of our intellectually absurd arguments that masquerade as enlightenment. Despite it all, God is still going to show up in the middle of your wrong road. You can try to dodge God, but I want you to know God is still going to show up on your doorstep uninvited. You may not want to have anything to do with him. You may have convinced yourself that you don't need him, but God will show up in your life. God will show up in your sin, in your hate, in your confusion, and despite your tough exterior. God's not afraid of us. We cannot run God off. David said it best when he said, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. God shows up. And he shows up just for us. Notice everybody else heard a voice, but they saw no man. Why did Paul get more out of the experience than everybody else? Because God wasn't showing up for them. God was showing up for Paul. This was God, by the way, making a special appearance for the Apostle Paul. You see, one of the qualifications to being an apostle was that you were an eyewitness to the resurrected Christ. And so God, even before Saul was converted, even before Saul was fully aware of his own destiny, made a special appearance in the life of a man who was on the wrong road so that he could qualify him for the destiny that God had sovereignly created him for. God shows up. God knows how to make house calls. God knows how to make special appearances so that you could be everything that you were designed to be. Notice what the next portion of the verse says. It says he knocks Paul to the ground. In essence, Paul, you ain't that tough. Paul says, who are you, Lord? He says, I'm Jesus whom you're persecuting. But Paul has never directly persecuted Jesus. What is going on? God takes it personal when we persecute those who belong to him. Someone needs to hear this, that God is fighting for you. He's pushing back the darkness. He's lighting up the kingdom. That cannot be shaken. You don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to answer every hater. You don't have to set every jealous person straight. You don't have to have the last word. Why? God is fighting for you, pushing back the darkness, lighting up the kingdom. That cannot be shaken. And so Saul is about to persecute Jesus by picking on God's people and go further down the wrong road. And do you notice what Jesus does when he shows up? He stops it. This is amazing. Have you ever been on the wrong road and God stopped it before it became fatal? Stop the overdose. Stop the untimed pregnancy. Stop the death sentence. Stopped you from losing your mind. Stopped you from taking a step that would be of no return. Stop the consequence that would have marked you for the rest of your life. Stop the progression that would have made you your exit from the situation even more difficult. When God shows up, when we're on the wrong road, he doesn't just show up and play. God shows up and saves. God shows up and stops. God shows up and rescues. God shows up and redirects. We serve a God that shows up. Number two, notice what he does next. He develops us in darkness. First of all, he shows up and stops us from going down the wrong road. Secondly, he shows up and develops us in darkness. Notice what the next portion says. Then Saul arose from the ground. And when his eyes were opened, he saw no one. But they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was 3 days without sight and neither ate nor drank. Saul's world has gone dark. This is often the reality of traveling down the wrong road. It first looks bright. It first looks promising, but then it goes dark real quick. It first looks like we have clear direction, but before long we realize we have lost our way. And this kind of darkness can be scary, can it? Remember when you were a kid and your parents cut out the light in your bedroom? Because it was time to go to bed, not because they were trying to make you suffer. And your sweatshirt hanging on the clothes rack all of a sudden turned into a ghost. Did that ever happen to anybody else? You know, the shadow from the tree outside all of a sudden showed up on the wall and you thought, uh-oh, the aliens are coming again. The dark can be really, really scary. But here's the thing I learned about God, is that God does some of his best work in the dark. From a complete canvas of darkness, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Darkness does not mean that God is absent. Darkness means God is hovering. Hovering is the Hebrew word which means to brood. And when a hen hatches its eggs, you know what that hen does? It broods or sits over the eggs so that what is inside of the egg can come out and appear in the world. And so darkness does not mean in any way, shape, or form that God is not absent. God is hovering. God is brooding. God is developing so that which is in you can be experienced and seen in your life. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning was the first day. God does some of his best work in the dark. It was that faithful day over 2,000 years ago, on a day we call Good Friday, where the Son of God and Savior of the world, Jesus Christ, hung on Calvary's cruel cross, his body bludgeoned beyond recognition. And in the middle of the day, he shouts with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? And in the moment of the day when the sun is the brightest, the sun hides its face and supernatural darkness comes upon the face of the earth. And it looks as if God has failed, but in reality, behind the veil, God is not absent. God was just hovering. God was doing the work of redemption in the dark.